You're reading this title for a reason. This appears right before your hardest test ends. Not at the beginning when you're confused. Not in the middle when you're breaking. Right before the end. And if you're seeing this now, it means something specific about where you are. The hardest tests don't announce themselves. They don't come with warnings or countdowns. You don't wake up one day and think, "Today my hardest test begins." You're already in it before you realise what's happening. And by the time you understand you're being tested, you're so deep inside it that you can't see the edges anymore. But here's what changes everything. The hardest tests have a signature, a pattern, a moment right before they end when reality shifts in a very specific way. And that shift is what brought you here, to this title, to these words right now. Let me show you what I mean. Tests in reality aren't punishments. They're not cosmic cruelty. They're recalibrations, reality testing. Whether you can hold a new level of awareness, a new way of being, a new capacity for truth. And the hardest test you'll ever face isn't about what you can endure. It's about what you can become. Think about it like this. When you're learning to swim, the scariest moment isn't when you're in the shallow end with your feet touching the bottom. It's when you first go into the deep water, when there's nothing beneath you, when the only thing keeping you up is your ability to stay calm and move correctly. That's not punishment, that's the test. Can you function without the ground? Can you exist without something solid underneath? Can you be okay in the deep? Your hardest test works the same way. It stripped away everything you used to stand on. Every certainty, every support, every familiar thing that made you feel safe. And then it asked you to keep going, keep functioning, keep being human without any of the structures you thought you needed. And you did. You kept going, even when you didn't think you could. Even when every part of you wanted to stop, you kept moving through the deep water. And that's why you're seeing this now. Because the test is almost over. Here's what most people don't understand. Tests don't end when you solve them. They end when you stop needing them. When you've integrated the lesson so completely that the test itself becomes irrelevant. You know how sometimes you struggle with something for months, and then one day you just get it? And once you get it, you can't remember what was so hard about it. That's integration. The moment when the lesson becomes part of you. When it's not information anymore. It's just how you are. Your hardest test ends the same way. Not when you pass some external standard, but when you become the person who doesn't need to be tested on this anymore. When the awareness is so deep inside you that the test has nothing left to prove. And right before that happens, reality gives you a sign. Not a dramatic sign, not a voice from the sky or a burning bush. Something quiet, something that only you would recognise. Something that appears exactly when you need it. Like this title. Right now, you know what the sign is? It's ease in the middle of difficulty. It's a moment of clarity in the middle of chaos. It's a strange sense of lightness, even though nothing external has changed. Like you're still in the deep water, but suddenly you realise you're not drowning anymore. You're floating, you're swimming, and you've been doing it for a while without noticing. That shift, that's the sign. And if you're feeling it now, even just a little bit, even just as a possibility, then you're in the final stretch. Here's what happens in the final stretch. You start seeing things differently. Not because the things changed, because you changed. The same situations that used to terrify you start feeling manageable. The same problems that used to break you start looking solvable. The same people that used to trigger you start seeming distant, like they're part of a reality you're no longer fully in. That's not spiritual bypassing. That's not denial. That's perspective shift. You're still in the test, but you're not being crushed by it anymore. You're standing in it differently. And that different stance is what ends the test. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. Let me tell you something about hard tests that nobody talks about. They're not designed to break you. They're designed to show you what you're made of. And not in some inspirational poster way. In a real, tangible, uncomfortable way. You think you know yourself. You think you know what you value, what you believe, what you're capable of. And then reality puts you in a situation where none of that works anymore. Where your usual strategies fail. Where your normal responses make things worse. Where everything you thought was solid turns out to be negotiable. And that's not an accident. That's the point. The hardest test strips away everything that isn't actually you. Everything you inherited, everything you copied, everything you perform, all the borrowed ideas about who you should be, all the inherited trauma masquerading as personality, all the defense mechanisms you thought were character traits. The test takes all of that away. And then it asks, what's left? Who are you when you can't pretend anymore? Who are you when no one's watching? Who are you when everything familiar is gone? And the answer to that question is who you actually are, not who you thought you were, not who you were trained to be. Who you are when all the training stops working. That person. That's who emerges at the end of the test. And that person is stronger than anything you used to be. Not because they're tougher, but because they're real. Here's the uncomfortable truth. You're not the same person who started this test. Shh! Can't be. The test changed you, fundamentally, permanently. And part of why it's been so hard is because you've been trying to stay the same while changing. Trying to hold on to the old version of yourself while becoming someone new. But you can't do both. You can't transform and stay the same. You can't integrate new awareness and keep old patterns. You can't become who you're meant to be and remain who you were. So, the test forced the issue. It made staying the same more painful than changing. It made holding onto the old version impossible. It created enough pressure that transformation became the only option. And you transformed. Maybe you don't see it yet. Maybe you still feel like you're failing. But you're not. You're just measuring yourself against standards that don't fit anymore. Old definitions of success that don't apply to who you're becoming. The person you are now would terrify the person you were before the test started. Not because you're scary, but because you're free in ways that person couldn't imagine. Free from things that used to control you. Free from fears that used to run your life. Free from needs that used to define you. That freedom is what the test was building. And it's almost built. Here's how you know the test is ending. You stop asking when it will end. You stop counting days. You stop bargaining with reality. You stop looking for exits. Not because you've given up, but because you've settled in. You've accepted. that you're in the deep water and you've learned to swim. And now you're just swimming, not fighting, not drowning, just moving through it. That acceptance isn't defeat, it's mastery. It's the moment when you stop resisting what is and start working with it. And once you reach that point, the test has done its job. It's taught you how to be okay when things aren't okay. How to function when nothing makes sense. How to stay human when everything inhuman is happening around you. And that's a capacity most people never develop. Most people need things to be okay before they can be okay. They need external stability before they can feel internally stable. They need proof before they can have faith. They need certainty before they can take action. But you don't anymore. The test burned that need out of you. It taught you how to be stable without external stability, how to have faith without proof, how to act without certainty. And once you have that capacity, you don't need the test anymore, because you became what the test was trying to create. Here's what happens next. The test doesn't end with a bang. It ends with a whisper. Things start easing. Not dramatically. Not all at once. But you'll notice small things shifting. Conversations that used to be hard become simple. Situations that used to drain you stop draining you. People who used to take from you start leaving you alone. And you'll wonder if you're imagining it. If it's real. If it's actually happening. Or if you're just too tired to notice how hard things still are. But it's real. The test is releasing its grip. Not because reality is being nice to you, but because you don't need that grip anymore. You learned what you were supposed to learn. You became who you were supposed to become. And now the pressure can ease because the transformation is complete. Watch for that easing. Watch for the moments when things that should be hard aren't. When problems that should be crushing feel manageable. When chaos that should be overwhelming feels just like life. Normal life. Difficult but navigable. That's not numbness. That's not exhaustion. That's capacity. You've expanded. You can hold more now. Contain more. Process more. Be present with more. And reality recognizes that expansion. So it stops testing whether you can handle it. Because you clearly can. Let me tell you what the hardest test actually tests. It tests whether you can love yourself when there's no reason to. When you're failing by every external measure. When you're losing everything. When you're making mistakes. When you're confused. When you're weak. When you're broken. When there's nothing impressive or admirable or strong about you. Can you still be kind to yourself then? Can you still treat yourself with respect? Can you still believe you deserve to exist? Not because you've earned it, not because you've proven it, just because you're here, just because you're alive, just because you're you. Most people can't. Most people need to achieve something before they allow themselves basic humanity. They need to succeed before they can be gentle with themselves. They need to fix themselves before they can accept themselves. But the hardest test strips away the option of achievement. It makes success impossible. It creates a situation where fixing yourself doesn't work. And then it asks, can you be okay with yourself anyway? Can you be human without being impressive? Can you exist without performing? And if you can, then you've passed. Not because you did something right, but because you stopped needing to be right. You stopped needing to prove yourself. You stopped needing to earn your own acceptance. You just accepted yourself. Broken pieces and all. Failures and all. Confusion and all. That's the hardest thing a human can do. Harder than achieving. harder than succeeding, harder than fixing, because it requires no action. Just being, just allowance, just presence with what is. And you did it. Maybe not perfectly, maybe not completely, but enough. Enough that the test recognises you've integrated the lesson. Enough that reality knows you've changed. Enough that the hardest test can finally end. Here's what you need to understand. The end of the test isn't the end of difficulty. Life will still be hard. Problems will still exist. Pain will still happen. But it won't be the same. Because you won't be the same. You'll move through difficulty differently. Not avoiding it. Not drowning in it. But moving through it like water. Like someone who knows how to swim in the deep. Like someone who's been tested at the highest level and came through it intact. Not unchanged. Not undamaged. But intact. Still whole. Still here. Still human. And that's everything. That's the entire point. The test wanted to show you that you can go through the worst thing and still be yourself. Maybe more yourself than you ever were before, because everything that wasn't you got burned away. Everything fake, everything borrowed, everything pretend. The test took all of that, and what remains is real, authentic, true. You. The actual you. Not the you that you thought you should be. The you that you actually are, when nothing else is possible. And that version of you is indestructible, not because it's strong, but because it's real. And real things can't be destroyed. They can be hurt, they can be changed, they can be damaged, but they can't be destroyed, because they exist at a level deeper than circumstance, deeper than events, deeper than conditions. The hardest test was finding that level, and you found it. And now that you know it's there, now that you've touched it, now that you've lived from it even once, you can always find it again. No matter what happens, no matter what comes, you know the way back to that deep place. The real place. The place where you are actually, fundamentally you. That's what survives the test. That's what emerges on the other side. And that's why the test had to be this hard. Because nothing less would have taken you that deep. Nothing easier would have shown you that part of yourself. You had to be pushed beyond every limit to discover that there's something in you that has no limits. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, I can hold more than I knew. Write it as your promise. Nobody.